Hey guys, welcome back to the Trainer Feed. Today we have a guest on. Her name is Holly Crane. She's a former coworker of mine, and right now she is a fitness specialist. So, how you guys doing?
Doing good. Not too bad.
Yeah.
Did the snow hurt you guys or not? It wasn't too bad.
What's up? The snow?
The snow wasn't too bad. Everybody was making a big deal out of it.
It's annoying what is left after it. The slushy, wet, annoying.
That's with every
shit.
snow. You know?
It's with every snow. Just I forgot. Oh, fucking.
Yeah, throw Alfie in it and then you just completely submerge him into.
Yeah, he didn't like that. Did it once and he got shocked and he was like, I mean, also think about it. It's fucking cold anyway, but yeah, it's all good.
You can see me out there training.
Yo,
I wouldn't be surprised if one of my clients was down to train in the snow. And I'm like, all right. So
burpees. Go.
At least you can cue better. You can throw snowballs at them, but like
having her do skaters on the ice.
I'd pay to see that. That'd be cool.
Cool. All right, let's bring on Holly.
All right, let's do it.
Holly.
Yo.
What's up?
Hi.
What's going on?
Chilling. I'm in Vermont. It's very snowy.
Oh yeah, how'd you guys get it up there? Was it a lot?
Yeah, we just drove today. We left at like 5:30 or 6 this morning. It was fine.
Yeah.
You know, I could use some snow tires on my car, but we made it.
Well, guys, this is Holly. You know, I'm not sure you guys Holly, were you there when they were training at 76?
I don't think so.
Maybe Jacques. No. Okay, I think you probably left by then.
Mhm. Yeah, back in the day.
Back in the day.
So it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to meet you, Holly. We wanted to ask a couple of questions. And probably just to lead off with it, so we can kind of understand a little bit more about you, and our listeners can learn more about you. Can you explain how'd you get first into fitness?
Yeah. What a saga. So I grew up playing sports. I think like a lot of us did. When I went to college, I took a gap year in between high school and college. So my family moved to Sweden, and I was there for a year. And that kind of like interrupted any like opportunity I had to continue possibly playing sports in college. I was not like training or practicing anything. So I went to college, wasn't really doing anything athletic at all. And in fact, just like was not like fitness was not part of my life, except that I enjoyed being active. Like I was more a cardio person. Like I grew up skiing, cross country skiing. And so like it just wasn't on my radar really. In college, my degree is in comparative literature, really nerdy, super nerdy kind of thing. And then what was really happening was through college, I've always been into theater, and I was really doing a lot of acting in college, and decided that that's what I wanted to pursue after I graduated with acting. So I moved to New York to be an actor. And that was horrible. It's a hard lifestyle. You know, it's really unpredictable. You kind of feel like you're constantly like putting yourself in front of people in the form of auditions just to be not even rejected, like literally not even called back. There's just so much like rejection that you just have to decide that you've been rejected because no one would even bother to tell you that. And so was kind of realizing all that. And this was where David comes in the picture, because I knew that I wanted a job that gave me some perks because I needed a survival job. And so I got a job at the front desk at Equinox. And David trained me. I want to say like my first day there.
I remember quick story. I always say the story when she walked into the club once. I think it was like a busy day, I think. And she just waltz into the club. It's like, no, I'm like, I'm sorry, who are you? Like, excuse me, you have to check in. She's like, oh, I work here. I'm like, oh. And then, I think that was your first day maybe, or I think you went to work out first and then you came to work. Yeah, I forgot what year that was. What year was that?
2012.
Yeah, I've only been there for maybe half a year. Yeah, because I started November 2011.
David's been there forever.
Ago.
Yeah, I've been there forever.
Yeah,
David built it.
David's got his 20-year anniversary coming up as well.
Yeah.
Dude, if that ever happens, I don't know what I'll do. Listen.
You're already that guy. You have a way longer tenure at Equinox than most people.
Yeah. Next year will be 10 years. Shit.
Yeah, that's crazy. but yeah, like and I think the joke that David makes is that's how I live my life, is I walk around like I belong in places that I don't necessarily belong. And that's been really effective, especially because, I think I was working at the front desk and started to work out and really get accustomed to what it felt like to be in a gym. I definitely took advantage of trainers in that way that you do as a front desk person. I was like, oh, will you train me? And I would never do that now, for the record. But I realized whoa, this is something I've never done before. I can't remember what trainer, it was like a trainer at 92nd Street who started teaching me how to squat. And I was like, oh, I'm strong. I'm actually strong and I can get stronger. And I kind of at some point was like, I think this would be a much better job for me than the front desk. David can attest to the fact that working the front desk sucks. David, you didn't mute yourself.
Yeah, David, you didn't mute
Taking
yourself.
deliveries. He's doing his side hustle.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, so I think at some point, maybe a year, and then 2013, I got my certification and applied to be a trainer and got transferred across the park to the Equinox at 85th Street on the east side.
Sorry, that's some technical issue.
And
My bad.
That was really smooth, David.
You get those kettlebells delivered finally.
Yeah, another my 10th one.
Nice.
Sorry, Holly, go ahead.
That's okay. Yeah, and I think that's really when it all started, was throwing myself into something that I had no background in whatsoever. I was a literature major, I didn't have a science background, but I'm a nerd. I love learning. I love studying for that certification. I love doing continuing education. And that I think has always been what has made me successful in the industry, is that I'm constantly I want to always learn more. And so I never got to a place where I felt okay, I'm good. And I think that's what has led to the fact that 8 years later, I have a very wide base of knowledge about training when I didn't do it until I was 23 years old. Because I was constantly seeking it out. And, I think I look back at some of the programs I was writing for clients back in the day, or even my own workouts, and I'm like, I'm going to give you your money back. It was bad. And I honestly think more trainers should be able to say that, because if you're not saying that, then you're basically admitting that you're staying the same, right? That your programming isn't getting better, that you're not improving as an athlete. So yeah, I fell in love with it. And at some point I actually started weightlifting, and that was also something David and I kind of were doing at the same time. And so I was getting into it from an athlete perspective. And then really also just noticing some stuff around the fitness industry that was really troubling to me or frustrating, specifically because I guess it was mostly about the women that I would work with, and a lot of female clients, and the most training clients are women anyway, statistically. But the thing that you've probably all heard, which is just this really sad sort of I don't know, a lot of female clients coming to me saying, oh, I want to look like this girl. Can you make me have these abs, or this butt, but not those legs? It's people coming to me as if they're a collage to put together. And that just never really sat well with me. And I was also really bothered by some of the way that I don't know, gyms are advertised. Equinox at the time was doing not a very good job at all of promoting any kind of body diversity in their ads. In fact, anyone at that time, now it's more trainers or fitness instructors are their models. Back then it was just models. They literally didn't do fitness. That was troublesome. I just didn't like it. And so I was okay, I'm an academic. I know that something doesn't feel right to me. I want to be able to talk about it, have language for it. I want to be able to affect changes in some way. And I think the best way for me to do that is to go back to school. And so I applied to graduate school, got accepted at the University of Minnesota in 2015, and that's when I moved to Minnesota in 2015 and got my master's degree in kinesiology. Kind of continuing my just always trying to learn more. and yeah, that was incredible. I was not in an exercise science department. It's kinesiology, but I was looking at more exercise behavior. So my thesis was on women in the weight room, probably unsurprisingly, where I was basically doing research on like trying to figure out why so few women were existing in weight room spaces. And like, you can notice it yourselves. Even at Equinox, it's happening a little less these days. And there are certain spaces where it doesn't happen at all, but you walk into a gym and the cardio deck is mostly women and the strength floor is mostly men. And as a strength athlete, like I've spent a lot of times in gym where I'm probably the only woman around lifting. And that was really interesting to me at the time. And so that was what my research was in. And, you know, I graduated and felt like I learned a lot and really developed language to talk about like bigger issues within the fitness industry, systemic issues, right? Not necessarily individual ones. Like, why is that? Why is it difficult for women to exist in the weight room? Why do you have to have this like years of knowledge to feel comfortable in there when like honestly some dude who's never lifted before walks in and deadlifts like crap but thinks he's doing it well and has no problem with it? That rarely happens for women because they feel so uncomfortable. And you know, I think like from there I kind of didn't really have a plan. I moved back to New York, was doing private training for a while, had been a trainer throughout all of that. Got my CSCS at that time because through my study of sports, I got really interested in strength training and like strength conditioning. And wasn't sure if maybe that was the direction that I wanted to go in. I was a strength coach at a high school for a little while, which was hilarious. And also just like, I will never teach children. They are so annoying. It was not, I was like, y'all are too much. I'm going to ruin you. This is not good. But then I also got an internship for a summer. I was a strength coach for a Division I collegiate like football program, which was like totally different. And fascinating from like a programming kind of like nerdy science perspective. It's so fun to train athletes. It's so fun to train athletes for a sport, right? Like that just intellectually was really interesting for me. And also the weight room is a really toxic place. It was nuts. It was like the language that I was hearing, like from the coaches even, I was like, you can't say that. like the words, I don't know. Do you guys like swear on here?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
You could fucking swear all the fuck you want. Sorry, Angel.
I'm trying to be less of a potty mouth, like, because I'm trying to like grow an Instagram brand. I'm like, I should probably swear less. But so like, pussy is.
David never had that thought cross his mind ever.
Yeah, no. Like pussy is the biggest one that you hear all the time, and like I get it, we hear that a lot. But like when you're having like, these are 18 to 22-year-old boys for the most part. Like those are boys at that point. You're in college, you don't know anything, right? Your amygdala is still developing, and you have grown male coaches saying, don't be a pussy. Like that's really problematic for a lot of reasons. But that's what is pussy and bitch all the time. And then I'm not even going to say it, but the homophobic slur that starts with an F.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I heard a grown man say that. And I literally was like, you can't. I called him out. And he got really defensive. And like walked away from me and was like very uncomfortable. And keep in mind, like, I don't work there. I'm an intern.
Mm-hmm. Because no one's called him out on it before.
Right. No one had, and so he came back to me, and what he said was, you know, he apologized kind of, but he was like, I'm just not used to there being women in the weight room. And I was like, okay, that doesn't actually excuse your behavior at all. Yeah. First of all, you used a homophobic slur that has nothing to do with me. Right. So it really jarred me. I knew that shit was out there. Like I knew that like collegiate sport environments were like pretty toxic, but to like be face to face with it, I was kind of like, okay, this is really important to me, right? Part of what I went to grad school for was like studying some of these bigger issues and knowing that working within the fitness industry as a coach, as someone who loves lifting and iron and athletics and all that, like I can probably affect a change with like, but I need to know more about it. But in that moment, I was not ready to be a strength coach. I don't think it's ultimately what I want to do, but also I was like, this feels too much right now. Like, I don't know if I could deal with that kind of language on a daily basis. Like, this is not the time yet. It's not the time yet for me to like deal with this stuff. And then I kind of like, I decided that the strength coaching thing wasn't for me at the time, and kind of drifted a little bit and ended up going back to Equinox as a fitness manager, which was really beneficial because that's when I got to teach training. And I love that. Like, I love teaching this stuff because I love it. I happen to think I'm a good trainer. It gave me the opportunity to teach people the more like softer social skills of training, of like how to not make people feel bad about themselves, like how to understand the person that you're in front of, how to think about power dynamics, right? Like all these sort of like things that you're not going to see in a cert, right?
Yeah.
They're just not going to be there. And that was great. It was great to like build a team. I had at this point, this was 2017, 2018 maybe, I had been doing pre-postnatal training for a while, got really, really into that. Was doing a ton of like certifications and research on like the pelvic floor and pregnancy and pelvic floor disorders. And that, became my specialty as a trainer, while also teaching like broader training concepts to my, my staff. And so like, I think that year and a half that I was a fitness manager was really good for just my intellectual development as a trainer again. Was just like going back to the basics and teaching them. That taught me again. Like, I had to like go back and be like, what does the heart do?
What's an FMS
4
again?
of them, and like the chamber, like I was like helping my trainer study for EFTI, and that was like good. That was good for me. And right, like the FMS, which I have issues with.
You mentioned the pelvic floor stuff. How was that? How did you relay that to the new staff? I mean, I imagine a lot of new trainers, younger trainers, don't want to go into that area, I think, mainly because one, they don't know how it really affects people. And, women, but also men. Like men, they have that shit going on too. And also maybe some people that are just a little like cringy when it comes to teaching somebody how to, what is that? Like the elevator, like, all that stuff going on.
Yeah.
Like, how did you relate to all of them, and how would you able to help them be more comfortable with it?
That's a really good question. And I think part of it was leading with the fact of like, just because this thing is awkward doesn't mean that you can pretend it doesn't exist. And
a lot of things.
Right. And that carries into like a lot of our lives, even outside of fitness. And a big thing that I would say is like, everybody's got one. Everybody has a pelvic floor. Gender is actually not a part of it at all, right? The mechanics of it are going to be a little bit different based on like your internal and external genitalia, but like, it's just, everybody has muscles there. And it's super relevant. And then once I kind of led with that, it was really just about how to give people the language to talk about it. And I'll be honest, I didn't spend as much time. I was basically opening myself to say, if you want to talk about this with your clients, come talk to me and we can talk through it. But what I didn't feel comfortable with was saying everybody should be talking to their clients about their pelvic floor, because the fact is, I believe everybody should, 100%. However, the conversation, you need to be very mindful about how you're having that conversation, and walking up to your client in the middle of a crowded gym floor and being like, so we're going to need to talk about you squeezing your vagina when you do the squat, is like maybe not the way. So learning the biomechanics and the like physiology is one thing, right? And that's fun and interesting and easy on some level, because you're just looking at diagrams and reading stuff and looking at videos. Learning how to have that conversation with a human is a totally different thing, and I think requires a lot of emotional intelligence and tact and patience. And that is, I was basically trying to teach all that from the beginning. I was just like, how do you do an equifit on a person and value all those things, emotional intelligence, empathy, all that stuff. And eventually my goal was like, I'm going to build trainers who have a base of that, so that when they start to feel comfortable with pelvic floor stuff, then we can have more direct conversations about what that looks like.
Yeah. I remember when I took my pre-postnatal, I forgot my instructor's name, Carolyn something. Was it Carolyn?
Yeah, pronatal.
Yeah. No,
Mm-hmm.
sorry, not pronatal. Something.
Annette Lang?
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
not,
that's why I didn't
wait,
mind
was it
with.
Annette Lang? Yeah, okay,
I didn't mind
sorry.
with, yeah.
It was Annette, yeah.
So
She still comes
she's
to
been
some
doing that for so
ever.
long.
Ever.
Hasn't really changed much either.
Yeah. No,
She's
but,
great,
you know,
but
yeah. But, you know, when she was teaching all that stuff, you know, it was kind of, and I remember that maybe a week later, I got my first client that was postpartum, I think, just had a baby like maybe like a month or 3 months later, and she was just wanting to start back into it. And then one that was currently pregnant, and I was like, oh fuck. All right, cool. And then I'm trying to have them, you know, I'm trying to say, okay, wait, I learned this, I learned that. Let me try to talk to my client about it. And one thing that really helped me a lot was just, especially if they're already pregnant, a lot from what I've remember from my client is like, they already fucking know. Like they're already like, you know what, just fucking tell me. So at that point, it was like, just get into it. I'm gonna tell you what it is. I'm gonna be confident about it because I was confident in myself. And they were just so responsive to it. You know, they were just like, yeah, no, this, and then they give you a little more information that you needed. But it was like, okay, yeah, cool. And then you were able to have a good amount of rapport for them. But it's a big thing. And now, honestly, I haven't really seen much of any pelvic floor discussion from anyone. I mean, especially with the pandemic and stuff, I haven't seen much of that going on online. I mean, I think you're the only one of the first ones that I've seen that has been out there and spoken about it just so openly, which is fucking awesome.
There's a lot of people getting pregnant too, so it's not like it doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
But
the baby making has not stopped.
It has
Yeah,
not
not
stopped.
at all.
It's accelerated.
Yeah, right. No, nothing else to do. Yeah, and also I think like on some level, the pelvic floor discussion is most easily had when a person is pregnant or has very recently given birth, maybe in the last like 3 months. I mean, that's all really good. That's great. That's important, right? And you know, if I could say anything to trainers who are working with that population, I would say like, great, do everything you're doing because it's easier to say, hey, you're pregnant. Let's talk about your pelvic floor because it's relevant. And then I would also say, get them into pelvic health physical therapy, always, like always. However, the pelvic health stuff, even if you've never been pregnant, if you were pregnant 40 years ago, that is actually when it's almost more important. Folks who have chronic pain, folks who have endometriosis, which is like chronic disease that basically people get like cysts on their uterus and on their ovaries, and it causes all kinds of like nasty stuff and pain, and it's a pelvic health disorder. PCOS can be a pelvic health disorder. They're all, and it's just like people who have trauma, people with sexual trauma. That's where like I don't feel comfortable just like teaching trainers off the cuff to like have these conversations, because you have to be really mindful of all of the shit that can be in a person's life. Like the pelvis, I mean, the more you get into this stuff, the more you get like a little like, ooh, like you got some wacky folks in this, like dealing with like pelvic stuff. But like if you think about like chakras, and again, like that's not really my vibe. However, the like pelvic chakra, like that is like the center of your being. That's where like so much energy is held. There's a lot of like trauma that's held there. And there's like research on the fact that people who've experienced trauma of any kind, but especially sexual trauma, have pain like in their jaws, in their feet. It's like, think about it, it's the center of everything. That is where everything connects, right? The pelvis. Mm-hmm. And we've just like ignored this really crucial muscle group for a really long time. And I struggle with this because I'm like, we should be talking about this more, 100%. We really need to be talking about this more. But we also need to be really careful about how we talk about this. So yeah, I just basically I consider my role in it is to just educate people on the fact that we should be talking about it, and that then there's ways to learn how to have those conversations. But at the very least, like just know that it's a thing. Yeah. Know that like your like incontinence, for example, right? Like you get, and this happens like women more frequently, just the genetic, like the way that we're shaped, right? Like incontinence is more likely to be an issue. But if you have a 45-year-old woman, let's say she did have kids, and she's like, oh yeah, like I don't do jump, I don't jump rope because anytime I do a jump rope or a box jump, I pee a little. And she's going to say that to you like, yeah, I just pee a little, so I'm good. Or she's just not going to say it at all, and it's going to happen. She's not going to tell you, or she's going to be like, oh, I don't really like to do those. She's embarrassed.
Yeah, maybe.
You can fix that. Probably a PT needs to fix that, but you can literally be the person to be like, you don't have to go through that. You can 100% start the process.
Yeah.
And what's really happening is people are embarrassed to talk about it, or they're like, okay, we won't jump rope.
Yeah. And then you lose a lot of benefits, especially like leads into my next question when it comes to resistance training and strength sports for women. One thing real quick, when I was at college, I did a paper in one of the gender study classes that I took, and it was about, getting an object that was very genderized. Is that a word? Genderized?
Gendered.
Or, gendered. There you go. And I chose a barbell. I chose an Olympic barbell. And I remember I was chatting with the class, and they were just like, especially the women, they were kind of like, oh shit, okay, well, that kind of explains it, but also maybe I want to try it. Like, it kind of opens a lot of doors for them, because as I said earlier, we're able to start the process of getting people to be more open to start discussing pelvic floor dysfunction or women in the weight room. What's the biggest thing you would say to somebody that wants to start weight training, but they still have all that all those notions and all that, the mentality of I shouldn't be touching weights because I don't want to get too bulky. What's one of the biggest ways you would try to prevent that from happening?
My answer to this has changed over the years. Honestly, earlier I just had no patience for it. I'd be like, just fucking don't. I hate that question because it's like offensive to me. Like, fine, don't. But in all seriousness, I think I'm gonna have such an annoying answer to this question, which is that it depends. But it depends on what is the person objecting to. Because, for example, all of us are gonna look at a picture of somebody at some point and be like, I don't want to be that bulky. All of us, because I don't want to look like Kai Green or whoever, right? Insert a bodybuilder. Like, I don't want to look like that.
Jacques, you could be Kai Green, Jacques. Just a couple of...
Kai Green's vegan as well, isn't he?
There you go.
He is. Yeah. He's amazing. Wow. What an incredible dude. But right, like, bulky is a completely subjective term. So I think, like, when I hear that, the first thing I do is just say, like, okay, like, bulky doesn't mean anything, because to me, so-and-so is bulky, but to like someone who's never picked up a weight before, I'm bulky. So it's not actually,
everyone's got a different definition of it. Yeah.
And so what I'll really say is, like, so what do you want? Don't tell me what you don't want. Tell me what you do want. Do you want to be stronger? Because you're going to need to pick that thing up. And literally no one has ever told me that they don't want to get, like, there's no ceiling on strength. Nobody says, I don't want to get too strong. No, I don't know. Like, I've never ever met a soul.
I've had somebody say that they want to get strong. She was telling me, I mean, in the beginning, she told me she wanted to look like a French model. The first thing off the cuff, I said, so what's up? She's like, I want to look like a French model.
Just French one. So.
Okay, just enough. And, and in my head, I'm just like, well, okay, are you French? Because you don't look like it. I mean, you can't say that. But, at the end of the day, then I would say the word stronger or something. And even some people, I think, would, equate the word strong with big.
Exactly.
So,
and that's when you say, like, strong, and right. So, like, when they say I don't want to get stronger, what they're really saying is I don't want to look stronger, which is a totally different thing. So yeah, I mean, again, it really depends on the motivation of the person in front of you. But, like, at this point, it's interesting too, because of the population that I work with. Most of these people are trying to get their lives back, and I'm not talking about people who are pregnant. I'm talking about people who have chronic health disorders, who are like, they literally need to feel strong because they feel weak all the time. And so I don't have that issue so much. But again, like, I'm usually just trying to find, like, all right, what you're telling me is that you don't want to look a certain way, and that's okay, right? That's fine. But, like, I want to know what you do want, and then you just go in that direction. Yeah. And usually you're going to find out that people do actually want to get stronger. They need to recognize that when they say I don't want to be stronger, that what they're really saying is I don't want to look like, I don't know.
And people don't know what certain things mean either, right? I mean, it's like, I had one right before I let Jacques ask some questions. I had one person who I she wanted to have all the things that I wanted her to have in a way. Like, okay, you need to get strong. We work on your bone density, all this stuff. And she's like, yeah, I want to get strong. I want to do this, that. And I said, great. So we're going to start you off with, doing some of this, some of that, maybe some hip hinge, deadlift stuff. She says, wait. She's like, whoa, I'm not deadlifting. I was like, and it kind of caught me off guard because in the beginning it was like, oh shit, she wants to get strong. Let's do this. I'm sure she knows what's going on. And I think the first thing I said is why? And I think in a way I kind of it was kind of aggressive, and I kind of I was like, I'm just saying, why not? Why don't you want to deadlift? And she's like, I just hate it with my old band. I'm like, okay. And I think we went to the gym floor, and I said, all right, we're gonna deadlift. So I put a little kettlebell in front of her, and she's like, all right, so you want me to, shoulder and then up? I said, I was like, I'm sorry, what?
Right.
He's like, no, you want me to, shoulder and then press. I'm like, no, I just want you to pick it up all 6 inches.
Put it down, yeah. That's
and
it.
put it down. She's like, oh. She's like, yeah, because when I went to CrossFit, they had me do all this stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, no. We're not about that life here. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think educating, and that's always been a value of mine as a trainer, as educating. I want people to be a part of the process. I need them to know what they're doing. Back when we were in person, they were getting their weights and bringing them to me. Go get me the plates, right? I'm going to tell you the weight, you bring them. This is how much you're deadlifting today. This is how much you deadlifted last week. Making them part of the process, partially because I don't know any other way. It's just I find that that's what I would want. And also we know from the research that people are far more motivated when they're given agency, autonomy, and information. Right? No one wants to feel like they're just going along. It's much more motivating when you're yo, you're doing 80 pounds. You only did 70 last week.
That's what I say. It's you want to give it a shot? Want to add those 2.5s? Let's do it.
Yeah.
She's like, all right, yeah.
And name it this is a deadlift. This is a dead bug. This was a squat. This is the front squat. This is the back squat. This is,
this is a Jefferson curl,
Sure. Right. One of my favorites, by the way. Yeah, I just think especially if we're talking about getting women and let's it's not even women necessarily, but it's folks who've historically felt excluded from gym spaces. And those are typically women, but also non-binary folks, queer folks, men who don't identify as athletes, right? Men who feel smaller, who don't feel as coordinated, anyone who doesn't fit your kind of white jock model can feel uncomfortable in a space. And one of the best ways to make someone comfortable is to give them the language and the tools to feel like they belong there. And if you can, and my goal with all of my clients back when we were in gyms is to be I want you to be able to go in without me, pick up a barbell off the rack, because that's hard, right? You gotta hold it, and it's difficult, right? It's heavier when it's vertical, and load it with the proper weight, and then do 10 deadlifts. If you can do that, then great, hallelujah, we've made it.
That's also something that I'm sure you met Diana when you were at West 76th Street.
I started weightlifting with Diana. Yeah.
So you know all about her. That's what I started thinking of when you started talking about making your clients get the weights. I saw it as something that stood with me.
That's the first thing she's ever told us. She would say I would make my clients get their weights. As you just mentioned, they know they're mentally registering or preparing themselves for how much load they're going to lift off from the floor. There's nothing quite like someone having the bar and everything set up for them. Okay, go into an 80 or 90 or 100 pound deadlift and not having lifted any of the plates. They're completely cold, assuming they've done any warming up. And that mentally, I think, helps them digest and register how much weight they're lifting. But I just think also, as you said, if they're going to do it by themselves and if they're going to go in and do it by themselves and they don't know, let's say the deadlift, they don't know where the clips are held. They've never carried the plates themselves. And also something as well in the squat rack, as you mentioned, when you load the bar, something as simple as the height of the, I forget the clips. What do you call them? The safeties?
Whatever.
What do you call them? Your height, your bar height,
the pegs,
the hooks.
Wait, no.
Are you talking about the power rack?
What are you talking about?
No, a squat stand. How high? Where you?
Where you load the bar back in.
What rack it onto?
Whatever.
I think they're called J hooks or something like that.
J hooks. Yeah. But anyway, so they're adjustable in the squat racks, for example, and even
we're trainers.
Yeah,
But
but
when
even
they're outside and people trying to squat inside and they can't figure that out.
they can't
Same
figure
thing
it
with like
out.
bars,
over.
right? Like how many
Yeah.
times did they say, "Oh, I picked up a bar," but I think it's a lot lighter than.
Oh, it was a lot
The one
easier
that we-
yesterday
35-pound
because
bar,
it was and you'll see some people that with even a training bar, which is even less. But that small element of changing the height of it, the J hook, is what we're going with. But I did want to kind of. I know I was taking a look at your site, and you mentioned, how, or at least one of the things I wanted to kind of cover with you is you talk about we assume or some form we're taught that men are supposedly stronger, and that's not the case. But I know you mentioned about the hope of having a women's NFL one day, which would be freaking awesome as well. I thought that was pretty cool. You wrote that as well. But what do you think? Kind of picking back on the points you made already, what do you think needs to help, or what needs to take place to help re-educating people or debunking this myth that women are inferior or the men are just naturally stronger?
Yeah, what a question. Yeah, so there actually is women's professional football. When I wrote that article in 2018, there was a league, and I didn't even know about it at the time. Nobody knows about it, but there is officially a women's professional football league.
Like
that
an
started
indoor
in
sort of?
Full tackle, full pass, full
okay.
contact football, but like no traction, no sponsors, no nothing. Right? It was just like its own issue. But yeah, I mean, so basically the question that you asked is kind of like my whole everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I would even extend it out to say, like, I think when I was younger, for me, it was a lot of like women. How do we get women in the weight room? Like, this is the problem. And I think like as I've gotten older, it's become less gendered for me because there's lots of identities that don't feel comfortable in the weight room. Like, and there are people who don't identify as women or men, like non-binary, trans, all these folks. Basically, it's just folks who don't feel comfortable in that space. Like, how do we make the gym feel the way it does the four of us? I'm pretty sure that we could walk into any gym anywhere and feel pretty comfortable, right? You know the names of the equipment, you know where stuff is, you know what to ask for. Seriously, you know where to be like, yo, where's this, where's that, right? You feel like you own that space. And I don't think, I do not think that everybody needs to go to the gym at all. Like, I think there are plenty of people who are going to live like perfectly fine, healthy lives, never setting their foot in there.
True.
However, I want there to be fewer barriers for the people who could maybe feel comfortable in that space. So I think for me, the approach that I've taken is kind of like manyfold. So like as a trainer, I try to walk the walk, which means my whole goal is getting people to feel comfortable in that space. Right. And that's just like anybody that I work with as a teacher, right? When I was a manager, it was teaching people how to make people feel comfortable. As an educator, because that's also what I do. And I taught a class at my the college that I graduated from a year or so ago. I taught a class about gender in the gym. And in that academic, intellectual way, my goal was to sort of say like, we approach sports and fitness in our culture as something that just is, right? It's not like we don't study it. We don't think too hard about it. Sport is sport. Fitness is fitness. You go if you want to. Fit people look a specific way, whatever. But like, we take it for granted in a lot of ways. We don't think about it in any deeper sense. We don't think about the fact that, like, for example, if I asked you what a fit person looks like, if I asked a person who doesn't know shit about fitness and I asked them what a fit person looks like, they're going to tell me probably thin, right? Abs, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, like, that's not true at all, right? Fitness there's no look necessarily. But again, like we sell fitness and sport as this like monolithic idea, right? It's something that just is what it is. There's no reason to like ask questions about it. My goal is to take people and be like, no, look at it. Open your eyes, right? When you walk into a gym and you see that all the women are on the cardio machines and all the men are in the weight room, instead of just walking by and being like, that's normal. What if you were like, why is that? Like, why is it that Equinox only uses certain body sizes to like advertise their services? Why is it that like the most successful trainers in the industry like look a specific way. You can just basically, I just want people to ask questions. Why is it that in the Olympics, only female athletes are sex tested? There is no sex testing for male athletes. It doesn't exist.
Did not know that.
And that, right. And it's not any of our fault that we don't know that. We're fed just, it's like, that's behind the scenes stuff. But as soon as you're made aware of that fact, right? Again, like there's no sex testing for male athletes. And to like explain why that really matters, what we're effectively saying is that the reason that we sex test women is that we're trying to prove that they're not men. Because if they were men pretending to be women, they would win because men are stronger than women. However, if you are a woman pretending to be a man, we don't need to test you because you won't win and you are not a threat to the competition. That's the baseline of that argument. That's not true.
Mind-blowing. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Totally. And you have like, and even today, the IOC does allow trans athletes into the Olympics, but you have to jump through a shit ton of hoops to do it. And some people don't want to jump through those hoops because those hoops involve surgery or freaking hormones, which are totally like, first of all, when you take estrogen, it does have an impact on your strength. That isn't the same thing as saying estrogen makes you weaker, but when you take it, right? So for example, a trans woman who is required to take estrogen in order to compete in the Olympics, that will affect her performance, right? So there's all these reasons why an athlete wouldn't necessarily want to do that, but it's the only way. Now, if you're a trans man, you just need to like sign a paper.
That's crazy. I didn't know that.
Wow.
And like, it's one of my favorite little factoids because in that simple fact alone, you kind of like expose this whole like underlayer of how we conceive of sport and fitness and ability. And as soon as you can see that, you can see it everywhere. And that's kind of that's how I like to approach it from an academic, intellectual perspective. It's just like ask questions, think deeper about things, right?
Don't just accept it is what it is. And
yeah, be critical because you can be critical and still love something. In fact, I would say that makes you love it more.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. No, I'm glad you touched on that, and frankly, shone a light on that in the Olympics. I had no idea because I've heard of some athletes who have had transformations and wanted to compete as their new gender and so on. But I didn't know the details of that gender testing you mentioned. If they were, say, a male coming over, I didn't know that, so that's quite eye-opening. It is interesting to have those conversations, though, and I think David touched on it earlier. If someone's got a preconceived notion that the deadlift, right, which they thought it was, I guess she thought it was
a clean
some
and jerk.
kind of press or clean and jerk, and just because a deadlift is something some people can do at a very heavy load or amount, doesn't mean you're making that client come in and do 200 pounds on the first day.
I mean,
right?
Come on.
I mean, David, you might.
I will. I'm like, you lift that. I'm like, what?
David's like, first day, your back's hurting? All right, let's go.
What?
220.
Let's do it. We're going to 5 RM.
Yeah. So there's also that to be said, I think. Right. But
yeah, I think that's also like, that's part of so I think a lot of my purpose in sort of sharing this phrase that's said quite often, well, but men are stronger than women. When that is used as an argument, it's never actually, the point of it is rarely to say, I'm making this based on the evidence that I have collected and based on this evidence that I have read, men are statistically strong. What it's really saying is you don't belong here. You should not be in this space because you are not as good. You will never be as good and therefore you should not try. Right? If you take it to that's what it's saying, and that's bullshit. Because if you remove gender from the equation, let's just say only men ever are only in the weight room, and if you walk up to someone, you're like, you are not as strong as Thor Bjornsson or whatever his freaking last name is. Why should you try? Then you'll never get anywhere, right? Like I think I say this in the article, which is that like I'm surrounded by both men and women who are stronger than me every single day, and that does nothing to my ability to be strong. Maybe it might like make me like feel inferior or motivated on any given day, who knows? Yeah. But it has literally nothing to do with my own inherent ability to get stronger. And so that's almost more the reason that I hate that argument, men are stronger than women, than the actual facts, because it's used as a tool to effectively say, stop trying.
It's very old-fashioned, isn't it? It's very, yeah. It's, oh, this is the way it's always been, and this is how it's still, yeah, very old-fashioned.
It's like, I think one of the things when you start thinking about sports and fitness, and like we use gender as an organizing principle in sport from the jump, right? As soon as you're 6 years old, you're divided into boys and girls teams. And so like, I definitely know people, and if I don't know, I'm not arguing that shouldn't happen. However, as soon as you're creating that binary, that divide, which doesn't really follow the science, like this is not really how gender or sex works, like it's more complicated than that. But like when you do that, you have to come up with more and more reasons to justify that. Right. It's actually really important that we, like, in order to continue in the structure that we've created, right? This idea that the two genders, and gender is the same thing as sex, and it's binary, and it is one thing or the other, and that they're opposing and different. We need to work really hard to like come up with evidence for that. We have to kind of make it up. It doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
So like, it's really important that in order to like conceive of men and women as two opposite things, it's really helpful to think men are stronger than women. Men have muscles, women don't. It's really helpful. It helps our argument. And so as soon as you have a woman who has a lot of muscles, right, then it's usually, you look like a guy.
Yep.
You can't lift as much as a guy though, right? Where we're constantly trying to be like, no, go back, go back where you belong. And that to me is the issue, is that it's constantly trying to say like, nope, I don't like when things there's a gray area, right? I want separation.
Can't either classify it or justify it. Yeah, that's exactly the issue, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm glad you touched on that. I don't know if you guys had any other questions. I have to jump off in a couple minutes, but you guys are more than welcome to stay on if you want.
I did have one quick question to ask. What are the facts in terms of trans people in sports? In terms of trans women? No, wait. Sometimes I get the names wrong. Trans male weightlifting in a what do you call it? Women's sports. Is that right? Am I saying it right?
Yeah. So I know it's like, it's confusing and we aren't given the language a lot to think about. So like, it's helpful sometimes to just think like, you can get rid of the trans for a second and just think like, what is that person's gender and are they lifting with that? Mm-hmm. So I've got a couple like just different examples to think about. The first thing to be aware of is that the USAPL does not allow trans athletes to compete. So it does not allow women, right? Okay. Trans women to compete in the women's weight class. Okay. And their reasoning is that if you were assigned male at birth, it confers an advantage on you that makes it unfair for you to compete with women. Okay, yeah. So that's where I was getting at, basically. Yeah, right. So lots of examples. So the USAPL still doesn't allow that, which is kind of fucking stupid because for a lot of reasons, but the IOC does. In weightlifting, which is the Olympic sport and the superior one, it is allowed. You still have to jump through hoops. But I'll give you the example of Laurel Hubbard, who in 2018 or 7, I don't know, sometime recently, she is an Australian lifter. She's a trans woman who competed against Sarah Robles. They're in the same weight class. Sarah Robles is an American weightlifter. She actually won. She won bronze, gold, in 2017 or something. Yeah. So Laurel came in second place, second behind Sarah. And the only people who had an issue with it were not the athletes. The woman who came in first, which is Sarah, and the woman who came in third, who I honestly can't remember, both were like, awesome, we love, what was the name Hubbard, thank you. We love her, she's great. Laurel. And the coaches totally lost their shit. Now everything was sanctioned. It was all that was allowed, right? She was totally within the rules, but she got, like you said, the articles were awful. She was being misgendered all over the place and people were saying that she's cheating. Interestingly, it goes back to just what we were talking about, which is what is cheating? what is advantage, right? Like if you, let's just say, for the sake of argument, this isn't true. Let's say that having male sex organs makes you stronger. Why is it cheating to be stronger in a weightlifting competition where you're trying to be stronger? Like, why is that a bad thing? Why isn't that just like making the competition better? Mm-hmm. Right? Like if LeBron James played any of these motherfuckers from like the 80s, wiped the court with some of the best basketball players. I don't know anything about basketball. I think I'm right though. So
well, you know LeBron is basketball, so that's good.
I knew that. Got it. There you go. So, but again, like we're making arguments not based on what we feel. What we're really saying is, I don't like trans people, and I don't want them to be here. You're not actually saying anything about competition or cheating because it doesn't make sense. It's not logical, right? Because what you could then say is like, well, people shouldn't. Michael Phelps shouldn't swim because his arms are long. Right? It's the same thing. Genetically, he has a disposition to be a better swimmer. Yeah. Genetically, maybe Laurel Hubbard has a disposition to be stronger. Right? So I think that's the science, and that is this. Yeah. People are doing it when they're allowed. And I think there's not enough data right now to say like if these people are stronger, they're probably not. Yeah. Right? But what really, for me, the argument is not based in sportsmanship or cheating. It's based in like, this makes us uncomfortable.
Wow.
You guys carry on. I just have to run. I'm so sorry, but I want to say thank you so much for taking time to talk with us. So yeah, I'm sure we'll talk again soon. We'll have you on. But thank you again so much. I really appreciate it. Be good, guys.
Thank you. It's lovely to meet you. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Jack.
Bye. Yeah.
Well, that's crazy. I mean, it really, sheds light on basically how sports are looked at behind closed doors and how fucked up it is when it comes to trying to include everybody in. And people, in a way, have the right to be uncomfortable to go to the fucking gym, because of all this crap going on.
Totally. Yeah.
Wow. What are some resources that you could, share with us that could, help a lot of the listeners and even myself, because I'm really interested in this stuff and when it comes to like just getting more educated in that.
Yeah, that's such a good question. So,
of course, your website.
Yeah, so my Instagram, my website, which isn't up yet, it's like it's going to be up in January. And a lot of the data for me comes from, honestly, sometimes it's as simple as a Google search. Like sometimes it's as simple as saying like trans lifters in such and such. Like for example, I'll just say like in the CrossFit Games, there's a famous sort of trans woman athlete who wasn't allowed to compete, and the CrossFit Games sent a letter. Their lawyer sent a letter that said she has an advantage because she was born a male, right? And this stuff, there's examples of this stuff everywhere. And I think the biggest thing is, I would say even beyond where to look, it's who to follow on Instagram. Yeah. And I kind of just want to, I should have come prepared for this, but I kind of want to come up with like a little list of like the folks in the industry who are thinking and talking and educating about this.
If you want, you could, shoot me or Angel or an email or a text and just let us know. Yeah. And when we set everything up, we could definitely put it in there.
I'm gonna do that, definitely, and just like send some folks, because sometimes it's just nice to have the little voice on your Instagram feed every once in a while that you're like, oh yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what's your Instagram handle so everybody can kind of check it out and find you?
It's _Holly Crane, all one word. So HOLLYCRANE. So _Holly Crane. It's only in the last couple of months that I started to try to make it like more professional, and it's very difficult, I will admit. But I am trying to put out
on making mine professional. It is just
a lot. I'm like, I'm not even getting paid for this. But I am trying, and I'm trying to make it as educational space as possible.
Yeah, and I think that it's important for people to have that as a resource too, right? So sometimes it is a hassle because it's self-promotion and it is something you have to maintain and something that you have to continuously provide resources and things like that for. But you have a lot of information, and there isn't enough talk about a lot of things, pelvic floor, including people in and diversifying different sports. So we need to have those conversations, and you could be a leader in that space, definitely, based on our conversation. And if the IG looks professional and if the website's out there, then people are going to take it more seriously. So David, goes for you too with O lifting. The more professional it looks, and the more you put out there, the more that people will start talking about it. And that's what leads any sort of movement, right? You need those leaders. And it seems like, Holly, you'd be a great leader, and you are a great leader in your space. So definitely.
Let me know when your course comes out. I'll gladly take it.
Thanks. That's so the goal. Like, I just want to teach. I just want to talk about this stuff. I love it. And yeah, really, like, seriously, guys, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. It's really special for me to like talk about this stuff and share what I know and what I'm passionate about. Yeah, it means a lot.
Cool.
Awesome,
thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. And I'll send some resources out to y'all.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Thanks,
Holly. Holly. See you later. Stay
happy
safe.
Holidays.
You too. Happy holidays.
Too.
Bye.
Bye.
Awesome.
It was cool. It was a good episode. I learned a lot. I have to research a ton.
Yeah, no, that shit, I love listening about that shit. It's so interesting, and like that's especially in school when I used to take my sociology and criminology courses. All that crap really is interesting.
Yeah, I got to take a look at some of, statistics and stats I didn't know about. I knew that in some sports they were trying to have the conversation about testing and if you should test, for hormones, or if you should just be like, all right,
they were
born.
testing that track athlete from the Olympics. That was a big thing last year, I think, or earlier this year, because she wiped the floor with people,
right?
And they were looking at her background, at her medical records. If I remember correctly, I'm probably wrong, but they were trying to, say that when she was born a hermaphrodite, or something was labeled on her birth certificate. So then it gave her an advantage because she had higher levels of testosterone than average woman or female that was competing. So they were trying to really get her medal, I think. Or if she medaled or if she placed, they were trying to like nullify it.
Yeah, that's always tough. And I think that's kind of messed up. I don't know. I feel that if you're allowing somebody to compete regardless of whatever, then it is what it is.
Yeah.
They earned the medal, they earned whatever place that they had. That is what it is. It's up to you to figure that stuff out, and also continue to provide evidence, like Holly was saying. Like, a lot of it is just tradition. A lot of it is just, this is what we've been doing for the past 100 years, and this is what we're going to continue to do.
Yeah.
And you need to provide evidence if you're going to have this as a rule, or have this as something that's part of your foundation for the sport.
Yeah. And especially if they've, like she mentioned, if you're going through all these loopholes to be allowed to compete, and then you compete and then they're still giving you shit.
That's a problem.
All right. You've done everything so come on.
I wouldn't do it. Right. And that's another problem with it. Someone like me would not compete, because it would seem to me that there is so many things that I have to go through just to be considered in the conversation. And then whatever place that I get or accolades I get are up for debate for the rest of my life. Then it's not worth it for me. Then I'll move on to something else.
And I was going to make a connection to the unconstitutional voting requirements that were made in the South years ago for people to vote, and going through all these fucking loopholes just to vote. And then ultimately people couldn't do it. And that could really sway it. But that's a whole nother topic, and I don't want to get.
No, I mean, that's one topic. Another one is race, and having different leagues for races. I think MLB just acknowledged like the Negro leagues, I think this week.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And they're trying to figure out how they would get people inducted into the Hall of Fame.
From the Negro League?
Yeah, exactly. Because they were a separate, or they made it a separate.
Is there a Negro League
entity.
Hall of Fame?
I think so. I have to double check that as well. But but it's one of those things where we're starting to learn more, and we're starting to.
Even that shit's so segregated. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's just wild. I don't know. But we're keeping up with the times, and we're trying to keep pushing the envelope. And it seems like people like Holly are going to be those leaders, right? Whether we're aware of it or not, she has a lot of research and a lot of like fundamental things that people need to start to have a conversation about. That's it.
Cool.
It was cool. What do you got going on? I know we're not recording next week, and we're probably gonna drop this sometime in 2021. But what do you got going on? See y'all next year, motherfuckers. Thank God, 2021, right?
Yeah.
But what do you got going on for the holidays? You doing anything special?
No, just mom and dad chilling. Nothing crazy. Yeah,
Cool.
I just work is work, you know. I mean, people are away. I had some people that had to leave because they weren't comfortable with coming into the gym, which I understand. So yeah, that is what it is.
How's the gym been looking? Are people doing the 6 feet and wearing masks, or are people starting not to wear
People
masks?
are wearing all the masks. The 6 feet thing is here and there because the machines are where they're at. You know,
Yeah.
it's like what you can't. It's hard. It's really tough if you want to do a certain exercise and you're like, okay, I need 6 feet, and then you're like, okay, well, I'm also doing this, and it's tough, you know. But it was empty the whole week. The gym has been empty.
Wow. I'm wondering about that as well. I mean, the numbers keep rising, but gyms aren't hot spots, but there isn't like enough space between like machines and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, predominantly I haven't been in the gym. I've been, you know, keeping my ultimate distance, staying in my apartment. I'm debating whether I should get 2 independent squat stands and a barbell.
They're pretty cool. Do it because those are easy to store.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the dimensions, and if I flip it upside down, it's easier to store than if it's like right side up. But definitely just looking at my space as a different, right? And
Listen,
I was talking to a couple of clients like
I'm coming over.
I'll put it outside on 125th and you can use it.
Definitely, man.
Put it right outside of Red Lobster. They always have music there anyway, just bumping. And since there's no indoor dining, you just use the music, just start squatting. You know, put some business cards in your back pocket. Let them know what's up.
Yeah. Put it between my butt cheeks as I'm squatting.
Oh man. Yeah. So I'm just looking at my space, looking at my living room, and saying I have these huge couches, but they aren't being used. And do we need the couches, or can we use this space in a different way? I know a lot of clients of mine have, you know, had that conversation with their partners, and they said, all right, let's get rid of this and let's insert a standing desk, or let's get rid of that and put some fold up chairs so we could do something, you know, I don't know, just different ways of using your space. Because if you're going to stay like this for the next year or so, hopefully not, but with distribution and, you know, vaccines and people.
There's a whole thing that I read about Pfizer having a whole shit ton of vaccines with nowhere to go because our great administration isn't letting them know where to go.
Yeah, that's the other side of it too, right? Politics will fuck up a lot of this stuff too.
The biggest thing is you're gonna have so many people fucking die because of fucking egos.
Yeah, that's true too. But I think it's always been like that, right? Humanity, civilization has always been this way. We are just experiencing it on a different level, different wavelength, different timeline.
You would think in 2021, you know, one of the first huge fucking pandemics to happen. When was the last pandemic that was able to be recorded? You know, it was like, was the Spanish flu maybe, right?
I'll say okay to that. I don't know. I'm not looking that shit up. But I think that we're always going to have those problems, right? Like even if we colonize Mars, or one of my clients told me to check out The Expanse, which is that show. I forget. I think it was on Sci-Fi and now it's on something else. But pretty much the premise is, you know, civilization moved from Earth to different planets, and there's colonization of those planets, and then the planets essentially want to be independent planets, right? And it's like it goes back to territories, right? Colonization of the lands, and you know, here.
You saying aliens?
I mean, we could be. That's a deeper question too. I had that thought as well one of these days, where I'm just like, well, what if we were?
Why are you talking like you believe in QAnon? Come on.
QAnon. I don't even know how to write that. But I saw a meme where it was like talking about people who don't want to get the vaccine or something like that. You know, now there's all those memes, and there was like a whole bunch of hieroglyphics, QAnon stuff, tablets flipped upside down in black and white, and there was like people were like, yo, Trump could still win the election if you read this, and there's just like a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, man. I saw this one video this one person that I follow posted, because she is very much, I think, anti, all that crap. And she posted about, there've only been a handful of reports of healthcare workers that have gotten the vaccine that have shown negative side effects. And there was one person that apparently was being interviewed about after getting the vaccine, and then as she's being interviewed, she was like, "This is like, oh my god." Like,
during the interview.
Yeah, she's like, "Oh man, fuck, I gotta go sit," and then she was fainting, and then people were like, "Look, don't take the vaccine." When you look deeper, she suffers from fainting all the fucking time.
Yeah.
And she's in front of all these cameras in a huge nationally wide, politicized event, getting a fucking vaccine now all of a sudden. Yeah, and you're like, okay, but you fucking believe this? Like, come on. And then Pence apparently got his vaccine too. And yeah, I don't know. It's so, everything is hypocritical. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. The only thing that I'm hopeful for is that this is just going to be another thing that we all argue about and all complain about, right? Like,
yeah, 100%.
It was the fact that people got COVID, and then COVID kind of like ran the conversation for a while. Then it was like, are you open? Are your states open? Are your businesses open? Then it was like, who's going to win the election? Now it's, are you going to take the vaccine, right? And at least we got to this point where it's a conversation about a vaccine as opposed to a conversation about COVID and not knowing what's going to happen with like your family and your business and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Now it's a different conversation, which has its problems that stem from that, but at least we're moving forward in some way, shape, or form. I don't know. We'll see.
Yep.
Anyway, we'll call it here and we'll wrap things up. Thanks guys for listening. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe at David Bravo Trainer at DB.
It's at Coach Bravo Trainer.
At Coach
Bravo I don't even fucking
Trainer.
It's at Coach_D Bravo. There you go.
Wow, that's too much. That's already too much.
No, it's not.
And we
underscoring it.
We redid it too, right? Like it was something else at first, and then me and Jacques gave
because y'all fuckers, I forgot what I had it. You guys were like, David, you gotta change it. I'm like, God damn it already. Anyway.
No, that's all good. Anyway, at the trainer feed, thetrainerfeed.com, all that jazz. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Wait. All right.